Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Chicago Soccer Talk with Collin. I am very excited to begin this week's episode, and also I want to give a shout out to the people who have given me great feedback about my new YouTube show and the subscribers and comments. Thank you so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. And I am going to continue Chicago Soccer Talk with Collin. The pilot episode was a rousing success, and I'm going to begin doing this as a weekly occurrence. So the goal is to, for this week, talk about the Chicago Fire. Last week we talked about the Chicago Red Stars, and there is no new news on the Chicago Red Stars front, any free agent signings, any news about ownership or relocation. So this week we're going to talk about the Fire because there is some news about the Chicago Fire that deserves being talked about. So for the Chicago Fire, the news we have to discuss is first, the Chicago Fire's 2023 season schedule has been released a few days ago, and it starts March 4th for the Fire. And this is also really exciting for me because this is the first season opener for the Fire that is going to be at home. The last years has all been on the road, but this is the first one that's going to be at home, and my goal is definitely to go to the home and season opener for the Fire. It might be cold because it's in March, but I am really excited to go to Soldier Field to watch the Fire take on New York City FC. This is going to be a great one because they won the MLS Cup 2 seasons ago. They beat Portland Timbers, and I'm really excited to see them take on New York City. They've lost a few players since last season. Son Johnson's gone, Alexander Collins is gone, and they lost another player as well. So maybe the Fire can take advantage. We can beat New York City, hopefully. I know it's asking a lot for the Fire, but we are talented. We have some good players on the roster, and hopefully we can improve upon last season's disappointing finish and somehow sneak into the playoffs next season. That would be amazing. As a Fire fan, I would love it if we can make it to the playoffs. Even if we lose in the first round, that's okay with me. At least we will make the playoffs. That's better than finishing towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference every year. That's not fun for any fans. And I've only been a fan of the Fire a few years, but I really enjoy the team, becoming a huge supporter, and hopefully we can pull off a season home opener W. That would be great for all the fans in attendance. Soldier Field's going to be pumping. It's going to be huge applause after the team gets the win. Fingers crossed. So some other matches I want to talk about. This is actually a fun fact. I was considering for this week to talk about the season schedule release anyway, but I have to give credit to Tyler Terrence. He is Chicago Fire's broadcaster. He released an article on ChicagoFireFC.com, and it was about, in his opinion, the most important matches to look ahead to for next season. And that means I can talk a little bit about the ones that he decided were vital for the Fire's success next year. So I talked about the first one, which was New York City FC. And in terms of matches that are important as well, 2 of them are Columbus and Charlotte. They'll be at home. These are going to be important ones because last season the Fire had leads against Columbus 2-0 and Charlotte 2-0, but somehow the Fire fell apart, which is not that shocking. But we fell apart and lost both of them in disappointing fashion. So hopefully we can get some sort of revenge on both of the teams, Charlotte and Columbus. Columbus, a few years removed from winning MLS Cup. Charlotte, new expansion squad. Hopefully we can take it to them and beat them at home. I think it's possible. Charlotte's not that great of a team, and Columbus is under a new coach, and they're still improving. They lost a number of key players after their championship. They struggled last season. Hopefully we can beat them this time. So some other matches, there's one more I want to talk about. This one, the team has actually not joined the league as of yet. They just started, became an expansion squad. Their first season is going to be this year, so they're not played in MLS matches yet. But that is St. Louis FC. They're making their debut this year. And why is this an important match to look upon? The main reason is St. Louis is close to Chicago. The Cubs and the Cardinals are big rivals. That's what Tyler Terran says, and yes, that is true. And maybe we can start a huge rivalry between the Fire and St. Louis because they're close. Fans can hold grudges. Maybe there's some bad blood between the teams once we begin. And hopefully, because as a Fire fan, I don't really have any huge hatred towards other teams in the league as a Fire fan. There's some teams I do not like, but it's not really because of the Fire. That's more because of watching MLS. I just don't really like them. So we'll see what the Fire St. Louis rivalry turns into. Hopefully it's super extreme and the fans and players hold this dark grudge. Maybe when the teams play, it can be epic booing. That'd be fun. At least as a fan, to have one team that we look at as a big rival. But we have to play before that can even become anything, because we can't do anything yet until they get on the field, which is going to be later in the season. And finally, last ones to talk about that are very important. We have a road swing in June and July, which is going to be really epic. We're going to play Portland, Kansas City, and Orlando. Back to back, all on the road. Those teams are pretty good and hard places to play at as well. So hopefully the Fire can get a draw or win in those 3 matches, because after that we go home for 4 matches in a row. So it'll be good to at least get some road victories and then play well at home. And one thing to note, the Fire routinely play very poorly on the road. So it's difficult to make the playoffs when you play poorly on the road and so on home. So hopefully we can play better on the road, hold serve at home, because that's something to look at. So that concludes this talk about the upcoming schedule for next season for the Fire. I'm just holding some optimism for next season. Next, I want to talk about an interesting move the Fire made. We have got a new player on loan. This is going to be very interesting. He's coming from Switzerland, and that is Chicago Fire have acquired Maren Haile-Selassie from FC Lugano. He is now a member of the Chicago Fire. And a little bit about his background. He is a winger, so he's a midfielder, and we could buy him as well. So once the season ends, there is an option for us to purchase his contract. So depending on how he plays, what we think of him overall, we could re-sign him and he'll become a member of the Fire for more long term. He will occupy an international spot on the roster. And this is a quote from our sporting director, George Heitz. He says, quote, "We are pleased to welcome Maren to the Fire and looking forward to integrating him into the group. We have watched his development during the past year at FC Lugano and believe he'll be a great fit in Chicago. Prior his pace on the wings, which is a priority for us this offseason." And overall, during his career, he's played in 199 matches. He's played 63 appearances in the Super League, 70 in the Challenge League. He was very important during FC Lugano's 2022 Swiss Super League Championship team. He scored a goal in their victory in the Swiss Cup final. And in 2019, he was loaned to Rapperswil Jona, where he played 18 matches, scored 2 goals. He's been loaned different places, but he was very successful for FC Lugano when he played there. And he is a midfielder on loan. So we'll see what Maren Haile-Selassie does now that he's a member of the Fire. I think it's a good move. He's a young player. He might be able to provide some depth on the wings, depending on Ezra Hendrickson's decisions and how he looks. He could become a starter. That's not out of the realm of the possibility. But it's good as a club to build with young players joining and veterans. So veterans and young players. And we'll see what he brings to the club. Personally, I thought we should try to target more defenders. But getting a midfielder is not a bad idea. He can provide depth, and that'll be a positive outcome for the team. Hopefully we're not done making moves yet. Hopefully we can get some more strikers possibly, or defenders. And that's something we need to look at, is defense. We've lost some defenders due to not re-signing them, and they have left via free agency. So hopefully we can target some from either in the MLS or other countries as well to bring on board. Because we need to start fortifying the defense. I know offense is a bigger priority in terms of the score lines and the club. Because we have a lot of games where we score 0 goals, it's 1-1, we don't score a lot of goals. But when we do have the ones where the defense struggles, the offense can't pick them up. So then we lose 3-0, 2-0. So we need to start balancing out defense, offense, and goalkeeping to keep a good balance between them, which can hopefully get us better on the standings side of things. Last, a little bit of bad news I want to talk about. This is some interesting news. I didn't really see it coming. We've lost a lot of players so far in the offseason. I thought we were done personally, but we have not re-signed one last player. He is gone. And this was mutual according to sources. According to the Chicago Fire communications system, this player, Jhon Espinoza, and the Fire have mutually agreed to part ways. So Jhon Espinoza is leaving. He has decided to permanently move to the Swiss Super League. An interesting thing, he's joining the team that we did with Maren Haile-Selassie, the FC Lugano. He's going there. So Jhon Espinoza, or Jhon Espinoza, is joining FC Lugano. And they haven't talked about the deal yet, any terms towards of contract or financial terms, but just that when it gets to January 1st, he's immediately packing his bags, moving to Switzerland, joining FC Lugano. And one thing that's interesting for me is about how in soccer, since you can go anywhere, any league for a transfer, permanent moves, you could be 1 minute living in Chicago, and then the next minute, you're packing your bags moving to Korea. Which is very interesting compared to some leagues where you just stay in the United States, Canada, that's all you go to. For example, most leagues like NHL, NBA, or NFL, occasionally you move to China and the NBA, but most of those you stay in the United States. But in soccer, you could be leaving the MLS any minute. It's just something interesting to note. but it's mutual, so he decided he was ready to move to Switzerland. Hopefully he enjoys it there. And a little bit about a quote from our sporting director, George Heitz. He said, "We thank Jhon for his contributions to the club over the last 2 seasons. He's an excellent player with great potential, and his move allowed him to continue his development in a competitive European league. We wish him all the best as he begins this new chapter with FC Lugano." And Espinoza originally was acquired by the Fire in a transfer from SD Acuas in Ecuador. He made 39 appearances, 8 starts, in 2 years for us. He also played in 5 matches, 4 starts. Chicago Fire FC 2 of the next Pro League. So Espinoza will be leaving, going to Switzerland, and defensive-wise, when he did start and did come as a substitute, I think Espinoza was a decent player. He's very young, still improving, and overall, I thought he was fine. This is not going to blow me away. I'm not going to be devastated that Espinoza is leaving. The issues I have with the move is on defense we lost Boris Sekulic. He's also leaving, and Espinoza is leaving as well. So 2 of our key defensive players from last season have both left. So we need to start improving our defense, like I had mentioned earlier. And this is not the way to do that with 2 players leaving. Sekulic is a veteran. He's much older. Espinoza is still young. Probably my bet is why he wanted to leave. He wanted to become a full-time starter. And the team could not figure out a way for that to happen based on our roster at the current certain situation, certain time. I feel like we could have done that with Espinoza, but now he's leaving Switzerland. So that's all I have for the Chicago Fire news at the moment. Before I conclude my second episode, I wanted to show a Chicago Fire FC flag. I wanted to wave it in front of the camera. And there's also one behind me as well. I put that up recently. And I'm excited to talk more about the Fire and the Red Stars, come up with some more interesting topics and ideas with news, roster info, and opinions as well. And hopefully in the future, I can get some interviews with either journalists or players. That one's long shot. That won't be for a while. But hopefully that can happen sometime on Chicago Fire Talk with, just kidding, not Fire Talk, Chicago Soccer Talk with Collin. I'm excited. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any comments about my YouTube show, let me know. See you next time on Chicago Soccer Talk with Collin. Have a good rest of your week.